In this lesson, we'll take a look at Thrinaxodon and see how it actually isn't a transitional slash intermediate fossil. Now, Thrinaxodon is claimed to be an intermediate between reptiles and mammals, but really, it's actually just a mammal. Or, at least for me for now, it's possible to leave on the table that it's just merely a reptile, though, it most likely isn't the case. Or, there's the third option, that it should belong in an unidentified vertebrate class and is neither a reptile nor a mammal. The parts that suggest it's a mammal are most of the skull. And then the claimed reptile parts are the rest of the skull, the limbs, namely the stance and posture they create. And then they also claim egg laying. However, it seems that most sources suggest that the egg laying is only speculative. There's really no good solid evidence for this. And it said that if they do lay eggs, then they just lay the kind of eggs that mammals like platypi and echidnas lay. So their egg layers are not reptilian egg layers. And then when it comes to things like soft tissue traits, like the presence of fur or three-chambered heart, these are all speculative. It's a fossil. We don't have these soft tissues. Looking at its skull, the mammal parts are its lack of an extra hole to make it a diapsid skull. See, reptiles, they have what's called a diapsid skull, meaning that their skull has an extra hole in it that you don't find in like mammals. And Thrinaxodon does not have this. Though, to give a full picture, should also point out that this lack of an extra hole is also true for turtles, which are reptiles. And then, still on the mammal parts, Thrinaxodon is a heterodont, meaning it has distinguishable different kinds of teeth, including molars. Though, again, to give a full picture, there are somewhat heterodont reptiles, and there are reptiles that kind of slightly have molar resembling teeth. So these two mammal parts can actually be found in reptiles, but due to their rarity, these most likely identify Thrinaxodon as a mammal. And when it comes to the supposed reptile parts of the skull, continuous tooth replacement is found in mammals like African mole rats, elephants, and manatees. And then having a single ear bone is found in platypi and echidnas. So if Thrinaxodon does lay eggs, it actually has something else in common with platypi and echidnas as well. And the final thing about the skull is there's argument amongst macroevolutionists as to whether it had non-muscular lips or if it had whiskers. So to try and say one of those two things definitely make it reptilian or mammalian, you're going off a not certain starting point. Now looking at the stance slash posture, having a semi-sprawled, semi-erect stance or posture, meaning the legs aren't wholly out to the side, nor are they up under the torso. This can be found in some mammals like moles and platypi, though good to point out as well as some lizards. However, because classification is based on extant, still around species, and it's constantly being redefined to try to match the macroevolutionist phylogenetic story. The idea that reptile-like lizards or non-mammalian synapsids like Thrinaxodon aren't conventional members of any current vertebrate class and instead should belong in one of their own is as easily possible as the mainstream idea as to what these things are, especially when just about, if not all, of the so-called mammal traits and so-called reptile traits can actually be found in both mammals and reptiles.